Time and time again, we wonder what Congress does. We wonder their job. We understand that they're lawmakers. We understand that most of them have some sort of lawyer degree, but they mostly wonder their concentrated job. We understand that they're lawmakers. Politics. We understand that most of them. But I really want to break down this evening from what I gathered through evidence, through some research of what Congress actually does, which I believe very vital to the taxpayer, very vital to the citizens of America. And I think it's important that we understand, how does Congress come to pass? How does Congress do anything to support and assist the American people on any regards, in any source of times? So with that being said, let's get right into it. Because I believe as American citizens, we entrust our elected officials with the responsibility of managing our tax dollars effectively and ethically. However, it is disheartening to acknowledge that in instances of illegal and improper use of taxpayer funds by U.S. politicians have occurred throughout the course of history, throughout the course of time. That's why it's very advantageous and economically for politicians to become exactly what they are. Because when we talk about corruption and embezzlement, regrettably, some politicians have succumbed to the allure of corruption, utilizing taxpayer funds for personal gain. We've seen it time and time again throughout the history. Embezzlement and fraud schemes where politicians divert public funds for private purposes undermines the trust we place in our elected representatives. These illegal practices divert resources away from essential public services and jeopardize the well-being of our citizens, you and I. Another area of concern is the misuse of taxpayer dollars through extravagant spending by politicians, lavish travel expenses, excessive perks, and exorbitant office renovations are just a few examples of the misuse of public funds. When you think about it, such actions not only indicate a lack of respect for the hard-earned money of the American people, but also divert resources from vital programs and initiatives that could genuinely benefit society. Could it not? Could it not benefit society if the government officials that you have elected that represent you within the government does the right thing by the money that your taxpayers coming out of your measly check that you receive each and every year? Because some people like to believe that those people who make $100,000 or more, those six figures that everybody is gleaming over, everybody is shining over, it's not all glitter and gold. Because if you're single and you make six figures, when you do the numbers after tax, you're most likely making anywhere between $73,000 and $78,000 a year. What about those politicians that misuse campaign funds? I mean, improper handling of campaign funds is yet again another issue that plagues U.S. politicians. I mean, in some cases, politicians have been found guilty of using campaign contributions for personal expenses rather than for their intended purposes of supporting election campaigns. Like when I look at the Republican Party or the Democrat Party, it doesn't matter what party it may be, but there are 11 candidates running for president on the Republican Party side. Now, we only know that one has galvanized a voter base, which is Donald Trump. And the rest of them, they may gather a couple of votes, but majority of them, if not all of them, are going to gather millions of dollars. The question is, when you donate your money to these politicians for their presidential runs, what happens to the money when they do not become the candidate? What happens to the money? I'm just asking questions because politicians have been found guilty of using campaign contributions for personal expenses rather than for the intended purposes of supporting election campaigns. This mismanagement undermines the integrity of the electoral process and erodes public trust all day, every day, does it not? Now, there are some things that I believe that we can do to subside, to oversee, to reduce the amount of fraudulent schemes that are within Congress and the three branches of government, so to speak, with the exception of the judicial branch where the Supreme Court resides. Stronger regulatory mechanisms should be established to ensure effective oversight of politicians' financial activities. Independent bodies such as ethics committees and auditors should be empowered to investigate and penalize instances of misconduct. In addition, the public should have access to transparent reports dealing how taxpayer funds are allocated and spent. You should have access. There should be a public website that shows the American people where the money is going, where the money has come from, where the money is going. Harsher penalties and legal consequences should be implemented for politicians found guilty of misusing taxpayer funds. This will serve as a deterrent and reinforce the notion that those in position of power are not above the law. Yeah, we need a scapegoat. We need somebody to show and prove this theory to be true. Reforms in campaign finance regulations are necessary to prevent the misuse of funds. Stricter reporting requirements and audits can help ensure that campaign contributions are used solely for the intended purposes, promoting transparency and accountability. You think this is going to happen? Probably not. But these are just suggested solutions in order to have a more transparent government, especially when it comes to your money and my money, your tax dollars and my tax dollars. Because citizens must actively engage in holding politicians accountable for their actions by staying informed, participating in local governance and voting in your local areas, and supporting organizations that advocate for the transparent and ethical practices. We can help drive change and demand better stewardship of taxpayer dollars, because the misuse of taxpayer dollars by the U.S. politicians is a concerning issue that demands immediate attention. To restore faith in our democratic system, we must promote transparency, strengthen oversight mechanisms, and enforce stricter regulations by working collectively. We can ensure that our hard-earned money, our hard-earned taxpayer dollars, is utilized ethically and for betterment of our society, fostering a government that truly serves the interests of the American people. The question is, do we have the balls to do so? Do we have the know-how to do so? Are we willing to stand up and do so? These are the questions that we really need to be asking ourselves, because it's time out for everything else, family. It's time out for those things that are not benefiting us. These things are not benefiting us each and every day. They're not. We have to come together and understand the way that the American government is not truly serving the people. And it doesn't really matter the side of the pendulum. It doesn't really matter the size of the coin. What matters is whether you're a Republican, Democrat, or independent, is the American government serving you as you thought it would serve when submitting your vote? Has it done that? I'm asking questions because I believe that it's very important that we understand how government moves, that there's millions and billions of tax dollars that is not being accounted for, and that we should hold their foot to the fire, so to speak, with transparency in order to understand how this government has yet to come forth with the promises to the American people, let alone certain groups. As we know, immigrants, illegal immigrants, damn near have more rights than the citizens that fund and support the very dollars that bring them in, house, and clothe them. I'm not anti-immigrant. I'm anti-illegal immigrant. I'm anti-illegal alien. See, that's the thing a lot of times when it comes to politics. You wonder if one side is for illegal immigration, the other side is for illegal immigration, or one side is this anti-immigrant, and the other side is pro-illegal immigrant. It gets very cloudy at the top, does it not? It gets very, very cloudy. But we have to stay clear here. We have to understand the different branches of government and how do they operate. I wonder, when I look at the different governmental branches and the role that they play, whether it be the judicial branch, the Supreme Court, that's where they reside, the executive branch, which is led by the President of the United States, okay? Or we have the legislative branch, which is Congress, okay? Which is Congress. Because we understand that Congress serves as a cornerstone of democracy, the legislative branch. We understand that it is responsible for making laws. It consists of Congress, which is further divided into two chambers, the House of Representatives and the Senate. Elected representatives from all states form the Congress. Their primary task is to propose, debate, and pass laws that address the needs and the concerns of the people, of the nation, of the country. Well, for quite some time, people have been calling out for secure borders. Haven't seen it yet, seen a half secure border. Can you use half and secure at the same time? I don't think we can. So we just go to unsecure borders. I mean, the legislative branch holds the power to declare war. They also oversee the budget, and they exercise oversight over the other branches. Now, as I stated before, when you have government officials misusing government funds, and then they are the ones who are overseeing the budgets, is that not a conflict of interest? But the executive branch. We understand that it serves at the head of the state and the government. This branch is responsible for executing and enforcing laws passed by the legislative branch. The president, elected by the citizens, represents the nation both domestically and internationally. This branch also includes numerous departments. We're talking about agents, the vice president, it manages foreign policy, commands the armed forces, proposes legislation, and carries out day-to-day governance. And then the do-nothing judicial branch, the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court basically interprets and applies the laws of the land. It consists of the federal court system, okay, which is headed by the Supreme Court. And we understand that this particular branch ensures the laws align with the Constitution and that justice is upheld. I mean, the Supreme Court consists of 9 justices appointed for life. We won't call out Clarence Thomas. It's the highest court in the land. It has the power to review all sorts of laws and settle disputes between different states and provides final interpretations of the law. Now, lower federal courts and state courts make up the rest of the judicial system, handling various cases and appeals. Basically, those cases that the Supreme Court does not want to handle, right? We don't handle that. That's a little small federal case. We'll let you lower court systems handle that, pretty much, right? So when I look at this, I look at the money, I look at the scams, the fraudulent behavior, and we would like to play one political party versus the other. But where has that gotten us? Has that helped the American people at all? Well, I'm a Republican and I believe in conservatism. I'm a Democrat and I believe in liberal. But at the same time, we have a country that is divided based upon your political views. If I'm lying, I'm flying. But these are things that we have to live with. And what's very vital and important is how we travel this road. And then some people who are undecided, we're either going to be a liberal or conservative, GOP, or elephant or a goat, I don't know. You're going to be a Republicansman or you're going to be a Dixiecrat. Who knows? You have those who land right in the middle. Independent. And independent is basically stating that you're going to choose Democrat or Republican no matter who's running, right? Like, I love the conservative side here. I love a lot of the laws and legislation they're proposing and some of the things they're going to do in government. I'm going to vote Republican. Well, this time, I like this gentleman here. He has some great things he's going to do for the country. I'm going to vote Democrat. That's all that what it is. There's nothing more. There's nothing less. When it comes to politics, yeah, there may be some conservative views you may have, and there may be some liberal views or democratic views you may have. At the end of the day, is your vote for you or is your vote for the country? That's the question. Is your vote for you or is your vote for the country? I think these are the questions that we're not asking ourselves constantly, over and over again. I think as the American people, through marketing advertisement, we get tricked, we get manipulated, we get fooled through all these sorts of propaganda that the American government gives us. I mean, the American government is the spearhead of how most Americans think. This is what I believe. This is my conjecture. You guys may not believe the same. You guys may not agree with some of the things I'm saying here today. But I know it's utterly important for us to understand how this American government works. And it has not been doing, it has really not been doing a great job, in my opinion. And if you have any oppositions, I would love to hear what you have to say. But furthermore, I had so much material prepared for you guys, and my system here seems as though that is acting up. Let me test something out very quickly. I had so much. Okay, so I can still be heard, but a lot of my screen sharing technology is on the fritz. But I'll try to continue to rock on here to end up just having a couple of issues, and hopefully I can continue to keep this going here. Let me see. Yeah. But I wonder how we can navigate this space to vote for candidates that's going to be best for our own self-interest. Does that make any sense? What's best for our own self-interest? I think that's what's important, because that's the one thing that we're essentially missing here. That's the one thing that we are definitely missing here. So with that being said, let's get right into it, because I think it's important. Let me share my screen here, family. When I was talking about earlier, the federal government wastes at least $247 billion in taxpayer money each and every year. Let's get into it. Oversight reports claim that billions being wasted every year on needless and duplicative programs. It states here, improper payments, which refer to payments that are made incorrectly by government, cost the U.S. $247 billion in 2022. We've wasted $247 billion. So I guess all of the money did not go to Ukraine, did it not? It didn't go to Ukraine, even though no money should have went there, but I digress. The U.S. government has lost $2.4 trillion in simple payment errors over the last 2 decades. $2.4 trillion. And family, if you're not familiar on how this math works, just remember 1,000 billion equals 1 trillion. 1,000 billion. That's a crap load of money. Senator Rand Paul claims billions more are being wasted every year from spending $1.7 billion maintaining empty government buildings to accidentally investing $28 million on forest camouflage uniforms to be used in deserts of Afghanistan. Where do you think all this money is going on these empty buildings? The Government Accountability Office every year issues a report on duplicative and overlapping programs, and every year they find more and more of these programs. Program after program, bill after bill are duplicating on top of each other. So when you ask what Congress does, they make duplicative bills. They just keep creating the same bills over and over again, getting funding and getting money. And if the previous bill was already funded, where is the money going? In the federal government, everything is go spend more money. And if that doesn't work, go spend it again. Go spend more money. That's the problems that we have in our government. Because when I look at this national debt clock, we're at $32 trillion. Debt per citizen that states here equals the U.S. national debt divided by the number of U.S. citizens. Debt per taxpayer. The debt per taxpayer equals the U.S. national debt divided by the number of U.S. taxpayers. How can a country be indebted mostly to itself at $32 trillion and still stand? If this is not a monetary sovereign nation, then I don't know what is. Now, I wanted to break down, this is coming from heritage.org, on 10 of the most ridiculous things that governmental taxpayer dollars are spent on. $25 million for anti-discrimination and bias training. Really? Really? They're spending $25 million at the Department of Health and Human Services to conduct training. Somebody getting paid. $200 million for a park, which is named Pelosi's Park in San Francisco. Is it San Francisco? I believe I read this. San Francisco. It states here that the Presidio Park contains many scenic views and even has a golf course, which they will be charging. I guess that money will go to Nancy Pelosi. I digress. Allegedly. San Francisco is one of the wealthiest parts of the country and can easily afford to support the park, which makes this handout egregious even without Pelosi's involvement. Welfare for journalists. I won't even get into that. They dump a lot of money into journalism. That's how they control the narrative. That is how they control the narrative, is by dumping millions and trillions of dollars into journalism. $1.25 billion for activists, bureaucrats, and all other sorts of things. Where I'm at here. $4.5 billion for federal housing plan takeover. This bill seeks to impose a federal takeover of housing policies, both through the construction of massive amounts of public housing and by strong arming local government into changing zoning rules. Sounds like gentrification. Sounds like redlining. $26.5 billion for left-wing transportation programs. I guess it's to transport all those illegal aliens, all those illegal immigrants. Congress is on the verge of passing a $1 trillion plus infrastructure package that came together following months of bipartisan negotiations. Extra funding for bureaucrats and ad campaigns. $197 million to subsidize hiring local teachers. How does this make sense? Spending package includes hundreds of billions of dollars to fund the left vision of education, free community college tuition, free school meals, and poorly crafted pre-K programs. Okay, I understand the free school meals. I'm a product of free school meals, public schools, that is. $7.5 billion community slush fund. What the hell is a slush fund? That's a do-nothing fund that everybody can put their hand inside and get paid. One of the many housing initiatives in the bill, Section 40105, will give $7.5 billion for a community restoration and revitalization fund. Oh my God. And number 10, 2 decades of funding of obscure tech accounts. Now, when we were talking about earlier about all the legislation, about all the things that the government and Congress does, and one of my favorite websites is this congressional site that tracks all the different bills that would be coming up. And here's some legislation, here's some bills that I want to get into. But first and foremost, let's first cover those duplicate bills. Now, some of you may laugh at this, but if you have a gas stove, a gas grill, this may be important to the American people. This is some legislation that Republicans have proposed that's been introduced that needs to go through the House, the Senate, to the president and become law. Save Our Gas Stoves Act. This is what the politicians are creating. Because I guess, because a Republican proposed it, maybe it was some Democrats that stated that, you know what? Let's take away the gas stoves to initiative clean energy initiatives. It states here that H.R. 1640 to prohibit the security of energy from finalizing, implementing, or enforcing the proposed rule titled Energy Conservation Program. Now, when we get into this law here, let me come down just a little bit. Here we go. The Secretary of Energy may not finalize, implement, or enforce the proposed rule entitled Energy Conservation Program. I mean, a lot of this, family, you have to really comb through because they don't really give you the information for you to decipher it for yourself, for you to comprehend it for yourself. But in a nutshell, it states here, the Energy Conservation Program, energy conservation standards for consumer conventional cooking products and for other purposes. That's what it states. And then if I get to the summary here, it kind of basically goes over the proposed rule prescribes energy conservation standards for consumer conventional cooking tops, including electrical cooking tops, gas cooking tops, and electrical ovens and gas ovens. So I guess the federal government, by the way, the Democrats allegedly are trying to take away your gas stoves. So what's the duplicate version of this particular legislation? Gas Stove Protection and Freedom Act. I mean, once again, this has been introduced, and I just want to give you a timeline here. The last action on this was June 5th of 2023, and we come back over here, June 6th of 2023. Let's see what the summary is on this one. Blah, 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 blah. The bill prohibits the Consumer Product Safety Commission from using federal funds to regulate gas stoves as a banned hazardous product or issue or reinforce a product safety standard that prohibits the use of sale of gas stoves or substantially increase their price. This is what I'm referring to. The federal government continues to use your taxpayer money to duplicate legislation that's already being introduced to the House and to the Senate. To the House and to the Senate. I wonder how much these people get paid. Oh, they get paid anywhere between $174,000 to $193,000, and on the top end, $223,000. And I always wonder, what are some of the perks that these congressional and Senate legislators have? So as I told you before, they have a base salary of $174,000, but majority of them make around $193,000. Okay, and some of you may say, well, that's not a lot of money for those who, pass legislation, who are in office. They work long hours to get these things passed. Let's look at some of the perks that these legislators and lawmakers have. Free parking at the airport. Do you have free parking at the airport? Oh, well, they're flying in and out. And listen, family, when you realize how much these people in Congress actually work, it's going to blow your wig off. And on top of that, all the perks that they get, okay? Because they're getting free parking even during personal travel. A free on-site gym for House members. Okay, there's a lot of organizations, corporate America, have gyms on site that let their employees work. So I don't see a big deal with that, okay? Weakened insider trading restrictions. See, what you, the American people, did not know that Congress at one point in time had information so they can insider trade. Let me tell you this, majority of politicians, Republican, Democrat, or Independent, are millionaires. How they're millionaires? Let's see here. Despite passing the Stop Trading on Congressional Knowledge Act, because of course Congress has all the knowledge, they has all the information of stocks and bonds, so they were investing prior to these stocks even becoming public. Perhaps known better as the Stock Act, in 2012, Congress gutted their primary disclosure component early this year. Now listen how they control both sides of the economy. While still making it difficult to make trades on the inside information, this means they don't have to publicly disclose their trades and potentially insider knowledge. So they can have, they put out an act. They put out a Stop Trading on Congressional Knowledge Act, meaning that congressional officials can no longer have this insider trader knowledge. Then they put another act and state, you know what? We don't have to publicly disclose our trades and our potential insider knowledge. What? They created an act to oversee another act. Then they pass the restriction, but it's hard to keep them honest if it's difficult to access that information. Up to 293 days off in a 360-day calendar year. It states here there were 126 congressional sessions on the docket without a single 5-day work week. That means that Congress does not go into work every day. That means, well, Ross, technology, they're probably working from home like you. They're probably working from home like me, leaving members of Congress with 239 days to work outside of Congress. Sometimes this means working within their home state. In other cases, it can mean a vacation. Members of Congress get the entire month of August off. They get 2 weeks around Easter's off and wasn't scheduled to work a single weekend. Congressional received health care subsidies under Obamacare. Say less. Say less. A better retirement plan. According to figures from the U.S. Census Bureau, the average Social Security recipient is going to net $15,000 a year in benefits, right? That's you and I. Once we file for Social Security, most that we're going to get back from Social Security is $15,000. Guess how much Congress gets, who served 20 years? They average around $60,000 in annual pension benefits. God damn! $60,000 in annual pension benefits. Now, members of Congress fly free. A vast majority of flights between their home states and Washington, D.C. are funded with taxpayer money. That's really unique, is the lawmakers are afforded the ability by airlines to book themselves on multiple flights without being charged multiple times because of their very liquid schedules.
Are you serious right now, bro? Are you serious right now, bro? Are you serious right now, bro? Are you serious right now?
That's what kills me. Because what they can essentially do is book an event that's only for an hour in their home state. They can book it a day before, a week before the holidays. Fly on the government's dime on your taxpayer dollars, absolutely free. And it was all just a showcase, maybe a speaking engagement only for an hour, maybe a show and tell, or just showing their face someplace for an hour and put it on the government dime as a business trip and stay home. And then they're funded their way back to Congress on the government dime once again. What about 1.2 to $3.3 million allowance?
Got him!
That's how I feel every time I read the amount of money and the do-nothing policies and the amount of time that Congress gets off. Members of the House receive a $900,000 annual allowance for a staff, as well as $250,000 budget for travel and office expenses, paid for entirely by who? The taxpayers. Each senator, on the other hand, gets a budget close to $3.3 million based on figures from the Congressional Research Service. Again, certain companies do offer lavish pay packages and perks to employees, so it may be a bit hypocritical to pick on Congress for this one. But however, I'm not aware of any business out there where all employees get at least $1.2 million in expenses at their disposal.
Got him! Oh, hell no!
That's how I feel. This is what we're going through. This is what's happening. This is your tax dollars at work. Family, you have the opportunity and the power and the leverage to vote, and you also have the same freedom not to. When it comes to foundational Black Americans, if reparations in the form of cash payments are not on the table, wiping away qualified immunity is not on the table, making Black Americans a protected class not on the table, if neither three or one of them are on the table, then why in the hell are we still paying attention and voting for these bootlicks and these do-nothing politicians, knowing the knowledge full well on how the system of white supremacy actually works and operates.